Everybody knows that bad habits can kill, but what happens when bad habits take on a life of their own? This is the Killer Bubblegum, based on the affair at 7 Rue Dame by John Steinbeck. At the beginning of the summer, a writer moved with his wife and his 3 children to Paris. They took up residence in a pretty little house at 7 Rue Dame. 2 weeks ago in the late afternoon, sitting at his desk composing a short essay, the writer heard the unmistakable, soft plopping sound of bubblegum, which was strictly forbidden in the house. He looked sternly at his offspring and saw him chewing away. The boy's cheeks were colored with embarrassment, and the muscles of his jaw stood rigidly out.
You know the rule, John.
I didn't do it.
What do you mean you didn't do it? I distinctly heard, and now I distinctly see.
Sir, I really didn't. I'm not chewing it, sir. It's chewing me.
Lay it here.
It won't let me go.
With a lot of force, the father was able to remove the gum from his child's mouth. For a moment it seemed to shudder there on the desk, and then it began to swell and recede with the exact motion of being chewed, while the father and son regarded it with popping eyes.
How long has it been chewing you?
Since last night.
And when did you first notice this?
I will ask you to believe me, sir. Last night, before I went to sleep, I put it under my pillow. In the night, I was awakened to find that it was in my mouth.
I must think this is something a little out of the ordinary, and I do not believe it should be passed over without some investigation.
At that moment, the gum came back to life and went straight for the boy's mouth.
Stop!
In a struggle, the father manages to subdue the gum. He opens a window and throws the gum out.
Son, you and I have seen something which, while we know it to have happened, we might find difficult to describe with any degree of success to others. I will ask you to imagine the scene if we should tell this story to the other members of the family. I greatly fear we should be laughed out of the house.
The father glanced up at the child's face to see it a ravaged field of terror. Under the door there crept a paper-thin sheet which, once it had entered the room, grew to a gray blob and rested on the rug, pulsing and chewing. After a moment, it moved again toward the son. The father rushed at it in a panic. He grabbed a club and beat the gum until he was breathless. The moment he rested, it drew itself together and for a few moments chewed very rapidly as though it chuckled at his impotence. And then it moved toward the son, who by this time was crouched in a corner moaning with terror. The father picked up the filthy thing, wrapped it in a handkerchief, and ran out of the house. He walked 3 blocks to the cyanide and flung the handkerchief into the slowly moving current. That night, the whole house was awakened by a terrified, muffled scream coming from the children's room. The father burst in. John sat up in bed squalling, while with his fingers he dug at his half-open mouth, a mouth which horrifyingly went right on chewing. After pinning the gum to a breadboard with an ice pick, the father felt relieved to have proof of the problem. Now at least he could offer his family an explanation for the recent strangeness around the house. For days they were besieged by the monster. They buried it in the fireplace, causing it to splutter in the blue flames and melt in a nasty mess among the ashes. Before morning, the gum was back. In despair, the writer drove far into the country and threw it from his car. Again, the gum came back. Fatigue and frustration took its toll, and after trying every possible method to lose or destroy the gum, he placed it at last under a bell jar. He lit a pipe and settled back to watch it.
I have the answer!
In the dining room, he grabbed a plate, then turning the jar over and securing the monster in its bottom, smeared the mouth of it with cement. He forced the plate over the opening and pressed it down until the glue took hold and bound the plate to the glass, making an airtight container. He turned the jar upright again and adjusted the reading light so he could observe every moment of the prisoner. The gum searched for a way to escape. Then it faced him and emitted a great number of bubbles.
I have you, my beauty. I have you at last.
The first day, the bubblegum tried every means to escape. Then for the next day, it seemed to be agitated and nervous as though it had for the first time realized its predicament. Now, in the 7th day, it may be almost over. The gum is lying in the center of the plate. Its color has turned to a nasty yellow. When little John entered the room, it leapt up excitedly, then seemed to realize its hopelessness and collapsed on the plate. On this night, the gum finally died, and the tired father buried it in the garden. This was the Killer Bubblegum. I'm Johnnie Adcox. Thank you, and please keep in mind that what you chew just may chew you.